Marcus Webb had what you might generously call the worst job in the galaxy. Not just bad, mind you, but cosmically, universally, spectacularly awful. He was the night shift janitor at Galactic Trade Station Omega-7, which meant he got to clean up after every species of pompous, self-important alien bureaucrat that the universe had coughed up. And let me tell you, the universe had quite the imagination when it came to creating jerks. Take the Vorthak delegation, for instance. Picture a cross between a rhinoceros and a tax auditor, but with worse manners. They had a charming habit of spitting acidic mucus when they laughed, which happened to be every time they saw Marcus mopping. Apparently, the sight of a human doing manual labor was the height of comedy in their culture. "Look, the pink monkey cleans our mess," Ambassador Grex would wheeze, his 3 eye stalks bobbing with amusement. How fitting. Marcus would just smile, dip his mop back in the bucket, and keep working. 23 years of this job had taught him that dignity wasn't something others could take away unless you let them. Plus, the Vorthak paid their docking fees in platinum, and Marcus needed this job. The Crystalline Collective was even worse, if you can believe that. These walking gemstones considered themselves the pinnacle of evolution, mostly because they could photosynthesize and never had to eat. They'd hover around the food court, literally glowing with superiority, while Marcus cleaned tables. Primitive carbon-based life form, Shard Prime would chime in her bell-like voice. Still requires sustenance. How quaint. Marcus had learned to tune out most of the commentary. He'd developed what he called his customer service smile, the kind that said, "I hear you, I acknowledge your existence, but I'm not actually listening to a word you're saying." But here's the thing about Marcus Webb that none of these cosmic bigshots understood. He was genuinely, inexplicably, almost pathologically kind. Not in a pushover way, mind you, but in that rare, authentic way that made you want to be better just by being around him. When young Lieutenant Kess from the Terran Defense Force got her first assignment to the station and was clearly overwhelmed, Marcus left a cup of real Earth coffee on her desk with a note that said, "You've got this." When maintenance worker Bogged the Hut, yes, that was actually his name, got sick with Rigelian flu, Marcus covered his shifts without being asked. The other humans on the station thought he was crazy. "Marcus, you're just making it harder for the rest of us," they'd say. "They'll expect us all to be saints." But Marcus didn't see it that way. He saw it as being human, the good kind of human, the kind that Earth needed representatives of out here in the cold, vast darkness of space. So when Marcus heard the faint crying coming from maintenance shaft C7 at 0300 hours on a Tuesday, he didn't hesitate. He grabbed his emergency kit and crawled into the cramped space, following the sound deeper into the station's mechanical bowels. What he found there would change everything. It was small, maybe the size of a house cat, with golden fur that seemed to shimmer even in the dim maintenance lighting. It looked like someone had crossed a lion with a Persian cat and then sprinkled it with stardust. One of its legs was clearly broken, and there was a nasty gash across its side that was leaking something that definitely wasn't red blood. "Hey there, little guy," Marcus whispered, slowly extending his hand. "What are you doing all the way down here?" The creature looked up at him with eyes that seemed far too intelligent for something so small. For a moment, Marcus could have sworn he saw recognition flash across its face, but that was impossible. He'd never seen anything like this before. The creature made a soft, trilling sound that somehow managed to convey both pain and gratitude. Marcus carefully scooped it up, noting how it relaxed into his arms despite clearly being in agony. "All right, buddy," Marcus said, already mentally cataloging the first aid supplies in his kit. "Let's get you patched up." And with that simple act of kindness, Marcus Webb set in motion a chain of events that would shake the foundations of galactic politics. Not that he knew that, of course. He was just the janitor. Marcus had performed what he liked to call veterinary miracles before. Living on a space station meant dealing with all sorts of exotic pets that passengers smuggled aboard, and he'd become surprisingly good at patch-up jobs. But this little golden creature was different. For starters, it seemed to understand everything he said. "Okay, buddy," Marcus said, carefully cleaning the wound with antiseptic. "This is going to sting a bit." The creature who Marcus had christened Buddy for lack of any better ideas actually nodded. Not the way an animal might bob its head, but a very deliberate, very intelligent nod that made Marcus pause mid-swab. "Did you just understand me?" Another nod, this time accompanied by what could only be described as a resigned sigh. "Right. Well, this is either the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me, or I finally snapped from inhaling too many cleaning solvents." Buddy made a sound that was suspiciously like laughter. Marcus had set up a makeshift recovery area in storage room B12, which was officially designated for miscellaneous sanitation supplies but was really just where he kept his emergency stash of actual earth coffee and the good toilet paper. He'd fashioned a bed out of clean maintenance rags and had been sneaking food from the cafeteria. The problem was Supervisor Grint. Webb. The voice made Marcus jump, nearly dropping the bowl of synthesized tuna he'd been carrying. Grint was a saurian think velociraptor crossed with a middle manager, and he had the charming personality of both. "Yes, Supervisor." "There have been reports of unauthorized life forms in the maintenance areas. You haven't seen anything, have you?" Marcus's face was the picture of innocence. "Life forms? You mean besides the usual vermin?" Grint's reptilian eyes narrowed. "The Galactic Health Department is very clear about harboring unregistered species. Penalties start at 10 years in a labor camp." "Good to know, sir. I'll keep my eyes open." After Grint stalked away, Marcus slumped against the wall. 10 years in a labor camp. For helping what was clearly an intelligent being. Sometimes he wondered if humanity had really evolved at all. But when he returned to storage room B12 and saw Buddy's grateful expression, he knew he'd made the right choice. Over the next few days, Marcus became increasingly convinced that Buddy wasn't just intelligent, he was highly intelligent. The creature had figured out how to operate the sonic shower in the storage room, had somehow arranged his food bowls in order of preference, and had even started what appeared to be a primitive writing system using Marcus's cleaning supplies. "You're not from around here, are you?" Marcus asked one evening, watching Buddy meticulously arrange bottle caps in complex patterns. Buddy looked up and made a series of sounds that were definitely language. Not any language Marcus recognized, but undeniably communication. "I wish I could understand you," Marcus said. "But don't worry, we'll figure this out." What Marcus didn't know was that half the station was in complete panic mode. He'd been so focused on his night shift duties that he'd missed the increasingly frantic announcements from the day shift. Security teams were conducting random searches. Diplomatic vessels were arriving at all hours. The entire command staff looked like they were one bad report away from nervous breakdowns. It was Lieutenant Kess who finally clued him in. She cornered him during his dinner break, looking absolutely frazzled. "Marcus, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." "Shoot." "Have you seen anything unusual? Anything at all?" "Small, golden, maybe hurt." Marcus felt his heart stop. "Why would you ask that?" "Because half the galaxy is looking for something called a sacred guardian. 3 different Imperial fleets have shown up in the last 48 hours. The Vorthak are offering 1,000,000 credits reward. The Crystalline Collective is threatening to blockade the station if we don't find whatever it is they're looking for." Marcus's mouth went dry. "Sacred guardian? That's all anyone will tell us. But Marcus, if you know something, you need to tell me. This is bigger than just station security. This could start a war." Marcus looked at Lieutenant Kess, this earnest young woman who was just trying to do her job, and made a decision that would have made his mother proud and his insurance company very, very nervous. "I might know something," he said quietly. "Marcus, thank God. Where is it?" First, I need you to promise me something. Whatever this thing is, it's hurt and scared. It's been hiding from whoever did this to it. I won't turn it over to anyone who might hurt it." Lieutenant Kess stared at him for a long moment. "Marcus, do you have any idea what you're saying?" "If this is what I think it is, I'm saying I'm not handing over a helpless creature to whoever's been trying to kill it. And if that helpless creature turns out to be the key to preventing a galactic war." Marcus smiled his customer service smile. "Then I guess we'd better make sure it survives to prevent that war." Sometimes being the janitor meant you got to clean up messes that nobody else wanted to touch. And sometimes, just sometimes, that mess turned out to be the most important thing in the galaxy. Marcus had been expecting many things when he led Lieutenant Kess to storage room B12. He'd been expecting her to be surprised by Buddy's obvious intelligence. He'd been expecting her to be amazed by the creature's beauty. He'd even been expecting her to be impressed by his makeshift medical care. What he hadn't been expecting was for her to drop to one knee and start speaking in what sounded like formal ceremonial language. "Lieutenant," Marcus said carefully, "are you having some kind of breakdown?" "Marcus," she whispered, still on one knee, "do you have any idea what you've been caring for?" "A hurt animal that needed help." "That's Prince Zephyr of the Celestial Empire, heir to the Golden Throne, future ruler of approximately 40% of the known galaxy." Marcus looked at Buddy, who was currently using a bottle cap to play with a piece of string. "This little guy?" "That little guy," Lieutenant Kess said, "is the reason 3 Imperial fleets are parked outside this station. His disappearance has brought the galaxy to the brink of war." Buddy Prince Zephyr looked up at Marcus and made what could only be described as an embarrassed chirping sound. "You're telling me," Marcus said slowly, "that I've been feeding table scraps to alien royalty?" "The highest level of alien royalty. Marcus, the Celestial Empire doesn't just rule planets, they rule entire galactic sectors. They have technology that makes our best ships look like wooden boats. And their heir apparent has been living in your supply closet." Marcus sat down heavily on a crate of industrial-strength floor cleaner. Well, that explains why he's so smart. Over the next hour, Lieutenant Kess explained what she knew. Prince Zephyr had been traveling incognito, investigating reports of corruption in the Outer Rim territories. His ship had been attacked by assassins. The working theory was that it was an inside job, someone from within the Empire itself. He'd managed to escape to the station, but had been badly injured in the process. "The whole station's been searching for him," she explained. "But he's been hiding because he doesn't know who he can trust." Marcus looked at Prince Zephyr, who was now sitting upright in what was clearly a regal posture. "But he trusts me." "Apparently. Marcus, you have no idea how unprecedented this is. The celestial princes are telepathic. They can read intentions, emotions, the whole works. The fact that he let you help him, that he's been staying with you, it means he's absolutely certain you're safe." "Great. So what happens now?" "Now we contact the Imperial fleet and arrange for his safe return." "And then?" "Then?" Lieutenant Kess looked uncomfortable. "And then we hope they're grateful instead of angry." What Marcus didn't know was that the situation was far more complex than even Lieutenant Kess understood. The attack on Prince Zephyr hadn't been random. It had been orchestrated by a faction within the Celestial Empire itself, nobles who believed that the prince's progressive views on interspecies relations were dangerous to their power. Main. Prince Zephyr had been investigating reports that Outer Rim species were being exploited by Imperial corporations. His disappearance was meant to look like an accident, clearing the way for his more conservative cousin to take the throne. But the prince had survived, and more importantly, he'd been cared for by exactly the kind of person he'd been trying to protect. A working-class human who'd shown him kindness without expecting anything in return. Marcus, meanwhile, was dealing with his own crisis. Word had somehow leaked that the sacred guardian had been found, and suddenly everyone on the station wanted to be his best friend. Ambassador Grex, the same Vorthak who'd been spitting acid at Marcus just days before, appeared at his quarters with a bottle of expensive Aldebaran whiskey. "My dear Marcus," he wheezed, "I always knew you were special. A fine human, very fine indeed. You called me a pink monkey last week. A term of endearment in my culture. Please, you must join me for dinner. I have much to discuss with you." The crystalline collective was even more direct. Shard Prime materialized in front of Marcus's cleaning cart, her faceted body pulsing with nervous energy. "Human Marcus," she chimed, "we would like to offer you a position as cultural liaison between our species. The salary would be quite generous." "You said I was a primitive carbon-based life form." "I said you were charmingly primitive. Completely different meaning." Marcus found the whole thing exhausting. These were the same beings who'd treated him like furniture for over 20 years, and now they were acting like he was their long-lost best friend. Prince Zephyr, who had been quietly observing all of this, finally spoke. Not in his trilling alien language, but in perfect, accented English. "They fear you now, Marcus Webb. They fear what you represent." Marcus nearly dropped his mop. "You can speak English?" "I am fluent in over 3,000 languages. I simply chose not to speak until now." "Why?" "What?" Prince Zephyr's golden eyes seemed to twinkle with amusement. "Because I was curious to see who you truly were when you thought no one important was watching." And with that simple statement, Marcus realized that his quiet life as a janitor was about to become very, very complicated. Marcus had seen some impressive things in his 23 years on the station. He'd watched solar storms that could swallow planets. He'd seen diplomatic meetings that decided the fate of entire star systems. He'd even witnessed the legendary Andromedan ambassador eat 17 consecutive desserts at a peace banquet. But nothing had prepared him for the sight of the Emperor's personal guard boarding Galactic Trade Station Omega-7. They were massive, easily 8 feet tall, encased in armor that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Their helmets were fashioned to look like the heads of ancient Earth lions, complete with golden manes that flowed like they were underwater. They moved with the kind of fluid grace that suggested they could probably tear the station apart with their bare hands if they felt like it. Marcus watched them through the observation deck window and felt his customer service smile falter for the first time in decades. "Marcus," Lieutenant Kess said quietly, "I need you to stay calm." "I'm calm." "You're hyperventilating." "I'm calmly hyperventilating." The entire station had gone into what could charitably be called panic mode. Station Administrator Fleming, a pompous little man who'd never missed an opportunity to remind Marcus of his place in the hierarchy, was running around like his hair was on fire. "Where is he?" Fleming demanded, bursting into the observation deck. "Where's the janitor who's been harboring the prince?" Marcus raised his hand. "That would be me, sir." Fleming's face went through several interesting color changes. "You? You're the one who's been, but you're just the janitor." "Yes, sir. We've established that." "Do you have any idea what you've done?" The Imperial fleet could destroy this station on a whim. They could turn us all into cosmic dust particles. Marcus looked at Prince Zephyr, who was sitting calmly in his carrier cage, looking for all the world like he was enjoying the show. "I helped someone who needed help," Marcus said simply. "You helped someone who could have started a war." "I helped someone who was hurt and scared." The docking bay doors opened with a hiss that seemed to echo through the entire station. The Emperor's personal guard entered in formation, their footsteps perfectly synchronized. Behind them came a figure that made even the guards look small. Guard Captain Aurelius was a walking myth made flesh. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his armor was inscribed with the battle honors of 1,000 campaigns, and his voice could apparently make lesser beings weep just by hearing it. "I seek the human called Marcus Webb," he announced, his words reverberating through the station's communication system. The crowd of onlookers parted like Moses had just shown up with some very specific instructions about water management. Marcus stepped forward, his cleaning uniform suddenly feeling very inadequate. "That's me." Captain Aurelius studied him for a long moment. The silence stretched until Marcus was pretty sure he could hear his own heartbeat. "You are accused," the captain said finally, "of harboring Prince Zephyr of the Celestial Empire without authorization." The crowd collectively held its breath. Marcus could see Ambassador Grex frantically trying to edge away from him. Even the crystalline collective had dimmed their glow to avoid attention. "Yes, sir," Marcus said. "I suppose I am." "You are accused of providing medical care to a member of the royal family without proper credentials." "Yes, sir." "Lady." "You are accused of feeding a celestial prince from standard station rations." Marcus winced. "The synthesized tuna was all I had." Captain Aurelius took another step forward. His hand moved to what was clearly a weapon of some kind. Marcus closed his eyes and prepared for the worst. "Prince Zephyr," the captain said, his voice suddenly gentle. "Are you well?" Prince Zephyr stood up in his carrier and made a series of musical sounds that were clearly language. The captain listened intently, occasionally nodding. "I see," Captain Aurelius said finally. "The prince says that you cared for him without knowing his identity, that you expected no reward, that you risked your own safety to protect him." "I just did what anyone would do." "No," the captain said firmly. "You did what a good person would do. There is a significant difference." Captain Aurelius turned to address the crowd. "Let it be known that Marcus Webb of Earth has earned the gratitude of the Celestial Empire. He has demonstrated the highest qualities of his species." Marcus felt his knees wobble with relief. "So I'm not going to be executed." "Executed." Captain Aurelius sounded genuinely puzzled. "Human Marcus, you are going to be honored." It was at this point that Administrator Fleming made what historians would later call a spectacularly poor decision. "Now see here," Fleming said, stepping forward with the kind of confidence that only comes from years of bureaucratic authority. "This man is a station employee. He was acting without authorization. I should be the one to receive credit for his actions." The temperature in the docking bay seemed to drop several degrees. Captain Aurelius turned his attention to Fleming with the kind of look that suggested he was reconsidering his position on the whole no executions thing. "You are claiming credit for the actions of Marcus Webb?" "Well, as his supervisor, I'm ultimately responsible for." "You are claiming," the captain continued, his voice deadly quiet, "that you ordered him to risk his career and freedom to help our prince." Fleming's face went pale. "Aye, that is to say." "Because if that were true, it would mean you had prior knowledge of the prince's identity and location, and failed to report it to the proper authorities." No, that's not what I meant at all." "Then you are simply attempting to steal credit for another's noble actions." The silence that followed was the kind that usually preceded someone being fed to something large and hungry. Marcus, in a moment of what he would later describe as temporary insanity, spoke up. "Captain, with respect, Administrator Fleming is just trying to do his job. He's not a bad person, just enthusiastic about proper procedures." Captain Aurelius looked at Marcus with something that might have been amusement. "You defend even him?" "He's never actually hurt anyone. He's just, well, he's kind of a pain in the ass, but he's our pain in the ass." And with that, Marcus Webb managed to do something that very few humans had ever accomplished. He made one of the Emperor's personal guard laugh. Marcus had always assumed that if he ever met an emperor, it would probably be because he'd accidentally poisoned him with improperly cleaned dinnerware. He'd never imagined it would be via holographic projection while he was still wearing his janitor's uniform. Emperor Stellaris was nothing like Marcus had expected. For one thing, he was surprisingly small, maybe 5 feet tall, with the same golden fur as Prince Zephyr but marked with intricate silver patterns that seemed to shift and change as he moved. His eyes held the weight of centuries, but there was genuine warmth in them as he looked at Marcus. "So," the Emperor said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made galaxies pay attention, "you are the human who saved my grandson." Marcus felt like he should bow or salute or something, but he'd never been good at formal protocols. "I just helped someone who needed help, Your Majesty." "Just helped someone who needed help," the Emperor repeated, and Marcus could have sworn he saw the corner of his mouth twitch. "Captain Aurelius, did you hear that? He just helped someone who needed help." "Yes, Your Majesty. Most profound." "You know what's interesting about that statement, Marcus Webb? In my 800 years of rule, I've met countless beings who claimed they would do anything for the empire, generals who swore they'd die for the crown, nobles who pledged their eternal loyalty, politicians who promised to serve the greater good." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Your Majesty, I'm not really sure what you're getting at." "What I'm getting at," the Emperor continued, "is that when my grandson was hurt and alone, hiding from assassins who wanted him dead, none of those loyal servants found him. A human janitor found him. And not only found him, but cared for him without asking for anything in return." The hologram flickered slightly as the Emperor leaned forward. "Do you know what the penalty is for attacking a member of the royal family? I'm guessing it's not a strongly worded letter. Complete annihilation of the perpetrator's bloodline, homeworld, and any planets they've ever visited. We take family safety very seriously." Marcus felt his throat go dry. That seems thorough. "And yet, when my grandson was most vulnerable, the person who protected him was someone who had no idea who he was. Someone who helped him simply because it was the right thing to do." The Emperor paused, and Marcus got the distinct impression he was being evaluated in ways he couldn't even comprehend. "Marcus Webb of Earth," the Emperor said formally, "I hereby declare you an honorary guardian of the realm. You are granted the protection of the Celestial Empire, the right to travel freely through our territories, and the privilege of calling upon Imperial assistance should you ever have need." Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry, what now?" "You're essentially untouchable," Lieutenant Kess whispered. "Congratulations, you just became one of the most protected beings in the galaxy." The implications started to sink in. Marcus looked around the docking bay at all the beings who'd spent years treating him like he was invisible. Ambassador Grex looked like he was about to faint. The Crystalline Collective were pulsing with what could only be described as nervous energy. Administrator Fleming appeared to be having some kind of existential crisis. "Your Majesty," Marcus said carefully, "this is all very generous, but I'm not sure I'm the right person for this kind of honor. You risked your career, your freedom, and potentially your life to help a stranger. What exactly would make you more qualified?" "I'm just a janitor." "Marcus Webb," the Emperor said, and his voice carried the kind of finality that ended arguments. "You are no longer just anything. You are a guardian of the realm. You are under the personal protection of the Celestial Empire. And anyone who treats you with disrespect will answer to me personally." Prince Zephyr, who had been quietly observing the proceedings, finally spoke up. "Grandfather, I would like to offer Marcus a position at court, as my personal advisor on interspecies relations." The offer hung in the air like a golden opportunity. Marcus could see the dollar signs flashing in everyone's eyes. A position at the Imperial Court would set him up for life. He'd have wealth, power, influence beyond his wildest dreams. "That's very kind of you, Prince Zephyr," Marcus said slowly, "but I'm going to have to decline." The silence was deafening. Even the Emperor looked surprised. "You're declining a position at the Imperial Court?" Captain Aurelius asked. "With all due respect, I like my job. I like helping people. I like being useful. And honestly, I think I can do more good here than I could sitting in some palace somewhere." Marcus looked around the docking bay at the assembled crowd. "Besides, someone needs to keep an eye on this bunch. Make sure they're treating their service workers properly." The Emperor studied him for a long moment, then broke into what could only be described as a delighted grin. "You know what, Marcus Webb? I think you might be the first person in centuries to surprise me." "Is that good or bad?" "It's refreshing." "Very well, you may continue your work here. But know that you do so with the full backing of the Celestial Empire." As the Imperial fleet prepared to depart, Prince Zephyr approached Marcus one last time. "You know," the prince said, "I learned more about good leadership in 3 days with you than I did in 3 years at the Imperial Academy." "How's that?" "You showed me that true authority comes from service, not power. That the best leaders are the ones who take care of everyone, not just the important people." Marcus smiled. "Just remember that when you're running the galaxy, Your Highness, the little people matter too." "I will," Prince Zephyr promised. "And Marcus, thank you for everything." As the Imperial ships disappeared into hyperspace, Marcus found himself standing in the same docking bay where he'd mopped floors for over 2 decades. But everything had changed. He was still the janitor, but now he was the janitor who had the personal protection of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. And that, he reflected, was going to make the next shift meeting very interesting indeed. Marcus Webb arrived for his Monday night shift exactly the way he had for the past 23 years, with his trusty cleaning cart, his thermos of coffee, and his customer service smile firmly in place. The only difference was the small golden badge pinned to his uniform, the official seal of a guardian of the realm, which according to Lieutenant Kess was worth more than most planets. He'd had the weekend to think about everything that had happened, and he'd come to a very important conclusion. He was still the same person he'd always been. He still had floors to mop, trash to collect, and messes to clean up. The only thing that had changed was how people treated him. And boy, had that changed. "Good evening, Marcus," Ambassador Grex said nervously as Marcus approached the diplomatic wing. "Beautiful night for cleaning?" Marcus paused in his mopping. "Is that a question or a statement, Ambassador?" "Statement. Definitely a statement. I've always admired your work ethic. Very thorough. You spat acid at me last week. That was a cultural misunderstanding. I'm actually quite fond of humans. Lovely species. Very pink. I mean, very nice." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I'll be sure to mention that to Prince Zephyr the next time we chat." Ambassador Grex's 3 eye stalks widened in terror. "You chat with the prince?" "We're pen pals now. He's got some very interesting ideas about interspecies relations." The ambassador hurried away, muttering something about needing to update his diplomatic protocols. The Crystalline Collective was even more entertaining. Shard Prime had actually brought him a gift, a small crystal sculpture that supposedly represented the beauty of honest labor. "For you, honored Marcus," she chimed, her faceted form pulsing with what he'd learned was extreme nervousness. "A token of our respect." "That's very kind, Shard Prime. I'll put it right here on my cart." You're not offended by its simplicity?" "It's perfect. Almost as perfect as the time you called me a primitive carbon-based life form." The crystal being flickered rapidly. "I was clearly referring to your potential for growth. Different meaning entirely." Marcus was beginning to understand why Prince Zephyr had found the political landscape so exhausting. Everyone was so busy trying to cover their own mistakes that they couldn't see the forest for the trees. But it wasn't all awkward apologies and desperate backtracking. The real change was in how the other service workers were being treated. Word had gotten out that Marcus, just a janitor, had been declared an honorary guardian of the realm. Suddenly, maintenance workers were being treated with respect. Food service staff were being thanked for their efforts. Even the sanitation engineers were getting polite nods from beings who'd previously treated them like furniture. Marcus was particularly pleased when he saw young Tommy Chen from the loading dock actually getting a please and thank you from a Regellian trader. 6 months ago, that same trader had thrown a container at Tommy's head for moving too slowly. "Hey Marcus," Tommy called out during his break. "Is it true what they're saying? That you're buddies with alien royalty now?" "I helped someone who needed help," Marcus said simply. "Same as I'd do for you or anyone else. But you could have anything you want now, right? Money, power, your own planet." Marcus looked around the loading dock at the workers who were finally being treated with basic dignity, at the cleaner corridors, at the small but important improvements that were happening because people in power were suddenly paying attention. "I've got everything I want right here," he said. Later that night, as Marcus was finishing his rounds, he heard a familiar trilling sound. He looked up to see a small golden shape sitting on one of the upper maintenance walkways. "Prince Zephyr?" Marcus called out. "What are you doing here?" The prince jumped down with fluid grace, landing silently next to Marcus's cart. "I told you I'd visit. I wanted to see how things were going." "Your grandfather's not going to be worried about you wandering off again?" "I have a full security detail hidden throughout the station," Captain Aurelius insisted. Marcus looked around but didn't see anything unusual. "Where?" "What? If you could see them, they wouldn't be very good at their job." They walked together through the quiet corridors, past the diplomatic quarters where Ambassador Grex was probably having nightmares about cultural misunderstandings, past the crystalline collective's meditation chambers. Past all the places where Marcus had cleaned up after beings who'd treated him like he was invisible. "You know," Prince Zephyr said, "my grandfather was right about you being surprising. Most people would have taken the court position. Most people aren't me." "No, they're not. That's what makes you special, Marcus. You don't want to be powerful. You want to be useful." "There's a difference?" "All the difference in the galaxy. Power is what you take. Usefulness is what you give." They reached the observation deck, where Marcus often took his breaks. Through the massive windows, they could see the stars stretching out into infinity, thousands of worlds, millions of species, all somehow connected by the simple act of one human being kind to a stranger. "I've been thinking," Prince Zephyr said, "about what you said, about the little people mattering too." And? I'm going to make some changes when I take the throne, starting with how we treat service workers throughout the Empire. Marcus smiled. "That's good to hear. They deserve better. They deserve what you gave me. Basic dignity, simple kindness. The recognition that everyone has value." A comfortable silence fell between them. Marcus finished his coffee and prepared to get back to work. "Marcus," Prince Zephyr said as they prepared to part ways, "thank you. Not just for helping me, but for showing me what kind of leader I want to be." "Just remember," Marcus said, "the best leaders are the ones who take care of everyone, not just the important people." As Prince Zephyr disappeared into the shadows where his security detail was waiting, Marcus returned to his rounds. He had floors to mop, trash to collect, and messes to clean up, same as always. But now he did it with the quiet satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with the biggest title or the fanciest uniform. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one holding the mop. Marcus Webb whistled softly as he worked, the sound echoing through the empty corridors of Galactic Trade Station Omega 7. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new messes to clean up, new opportunities to help someone who needed it. And if those messes happened to involve intergalactic politics, well, that was just another day at the office for the janitor who'd accidentally become one of the most protected beings in the galaxy. After all, somebody had to keep the universe clean, and Marcus Webb was just the human for the job.